My ex-mother-in-law sent 6 women from her church to publicly humiliate my 15-year-old daughter in the middle of a crowded market. They surrounded her, pointing and raising their voices just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, calling her unchristian and selfish. So a week later, I walked into that same church and quietly dismantled her reputation using nothing but printed proof and the truth. I'm 46 years old, and I have 2 daughters, Emma, who's 17, and Lily, who just turned 15. Last year, my ex-husband Daniel died in a car accident. At his funeral, people described him as devoted and faithful, the kind of man who put family first. What they didn't know was that we were already in the middle of a divorce because Daniel had been living a double life. He wasn't just having an affair, he had 2 children with another woman. My daughters were the ones who discovered it. They found the messages, the photos, the receipts. They came to me confused and shaking, asking if it was real. Before we could even begin to process that betrayal, Daniel died. A few months later, his affair partner died too, leaving those 2 boys without parents. That tragedy became the foundation for my former in-laws' new narrative, one where I was the villain. They tried to gain custody of my daughters, claiming I was emotionally unstable. When that didn't work, they insisted on moving into my home to help. And when that failed too, they began pressuring my daughters to bond with their half-brothers, framing it as a moral obligation. Last weekend was Lily's birthday, and I wanted to give her something normal, something light. There's a small farmer's market near us that she loves, full of homemade sweets and fresh bread. I gave her some money and told her to enjoy herself. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was Lily, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She told me that a group of women were yelling at her. Emma and I ran across the market, and when I saw what was happening, my stomach dropped. Lily was backed against a produce stand while 6 older women stood around her, scolding her loudly about her behavior. They accused her of being cold-hearted for refusing to spend time with her grandparents, and told her she should be ashamed for not wanting to be a good sister to her orphaned half-brothers. These were women in their 60s and 70s, publicly shaming a grieving teenager. I stepped in front of my daughter and asked Emma to take her things to the car. Some of the women recognized me from my ex-in-law's church. They told me I had failed as a Christian wife, that I had destroyed my family, and that my daughters were suffering because of my pride. One of them even suggested that if I had been more obedient, none of this would have happened. Security eventually asked us all to leave because of the scene. As I walked my daughters to the car, the women followed us, still lecturing, still judging. That night, after my daughters were asleep, I contacted someone I knew from that church. He apologized immediately and then sent me screenshots of a long post Margaret had written in the church's private Facebook group. In her version of events, we had abandoned them. She claimed they were nearly homeless and that my daughters refused to speak to them out of cruelty. Most disturbingly, she said the 2 boys were not the result of an affair at all. She told everyone the other woman had been our surrogate because I couldn't have more children, and that I rejected the babies because they were boys. It was a carefully constructed lie, designed to avoid one critical detail: adultery. In that church, cheating is considered one of the gravest sins. By removing that element, she transformed her son from a betrayer into a victim. What she forgot was that when Daniel died, our divorce hadn't been finalized. I still had access to everything: messages between him and his mistress, conversations where his parents acknowledged the affair, texts blaming my daughters for exposing him. One message, sent 2 days after Daniel died, implied that if the girls hadn't revealed the truth, he wouldn't have been under stress, and maybe the accident wouldn't have happened. They blamed my children for his death. Instead of arguing online, I decided to respond differently. I went to a print shop and printed every piece of evidence I had, high-quality copies of photos, screenshots, and emails. Then I spent hours assembling small binders that looked exactly like the hymn booklets the church hands out during services. The only difference was what was inside. The first page featured a clear photo of Daniel kissing his mistress in our living room, followed by page after page of documented proof of the affair and the harassment that followed. On Sunday morning, I arrived early and placed the binders on the table where spare hymn books are kept. No one checks them. I didn't stay for the service. I didn't need to. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing. Members of the congregation were discovering the contents. There were whispers, messages, and eventually outrage. The church's Facebook group erupted, and the pastor had to intervene to calm things down. This time, the anger wasn't directed at my daughters. It was directed at Margaret and Richard. They were criticized for lying, for manipulating sympathy, and for allowing their friends to harass a teenage girl. Eventually, they were asked to step away from the congregation. I received handwritten apology letters for my daughters, along with offers of support. Margaret posted one final message about feeling abandoned and misunderstood, wishing her son were still alive to care for her. I never intended to start a war. I only wanted my children to be left in peace. You can control a narrative for a while. You can manipulate people's sympathy. But when your story depends on hiding the truth, all it takes is one person willing to bring receipts. So tell me, did I cross a line or did she?